Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. So big news, Spurs look like they've got their new manager, and also Newcastle now being reported to be in for Victor Osimhen. They can definitely do that deal. Should they be doing that deal? Will they do that deal? And are they now the favourites to bring in one of the big target strikers of this summer transfer window? Well, let's start off with this Newcastle story, because to be honest with you, with Spurs, who knows what will happen with their manager? They might have one by Christmas. But with Newcastle, this is coming in from Italian reports that Newcastle are in and competing to sign Victor Osimhen this summer. Now, I know a lot about this player. I'm sure you do as well. He's been linked with PSG. He's been linked with Manchester United. The feeling is that Chelsea would steal a march on everybody like they traditionally do and bring in the striker that they need. But of course, Newcastle, Manchester United, PSG, they can offer Champions League football. Chelsea can't, and nobody really understands what the financials are at Chelsea at the moment, even though they've appointed Pochettino, and they do need a superstar striker. Now, what I would say about Victor Osimhen is that, without a shadow of a doubt, I wouldn't be worried about Premier League proven. This is a guy that's done it in France. He's done it in Italy. I think it's difficult in Italy to score a lot of goals, and he's done it very, very convincingly in a side that, a year or two ago, Napoli would not be predicted to be winning titles. They won the title comprehensively this year. He was a huge part of that. Would Newcastle be a good fit for Victor Osimhen? I could see it. I could see it. I could see him in a Chelsea shirt. I could see him in a PSG shirt. I'd like to see him in a Manchester United shirt. But the big thing that overarches Victor Osimhen in this summer is the desire to come to the Premier League. That's his dream. But the desire of Napoli to not let him go. And if they do let him go, they get a ridiculous fee of probably north of £100 million, which will put a lot of people off. The question is, what does that sort of a signing do for Newcastle United? What does it do for Manchester United? What does it do for Chelsea? I think you drop him into any of those teams, and those teams become a very, very serious contender to potentially be pushing Arsenal as the team that pushed Man City this year. You add Victor Osimhen in, and with all due respect to Callum Wilson, and Man United and Chelsea don't have strikers, that's going to take those teams up a level. People obsess about Harry Kane, and it's very easy to talk about Harry Kane because he plays in the Premier League and we know his quality. 30 goals in a Spurs side, you put Harry Kane up front for Chelsea or Newcastle or Manchester United, he's going to make a difference. He's going to make a difference, but I believe that Victor Osimhen will make that difference as well. Newcastle have got the money. What I hear is, well, why would he go to Newcastle? Well, why would he go to Newcastle? Because they can afford him, because they'll pay him good money, and because they're in the Champions League, and I don't think they're going to leave that. And I think signing people like Victor Osimhen makes it more unlikely that you'll leave a club, leave a place like that. The second thing is, why would they sign him when they've got Isaac and Callum Wilson? Because at some point, Newcastle and their fans and the media have got to look at what Manchester City have done and go, this is what they do. This is the blueprint. This is what you do. You get the money, you get into the top four, and then you want to win the league, and then you want to win the Champions League. And you don't do that with Richard Dunn and Simon Ireland and Robinho. You do it with Kevin De Bruyne and Aguero and people like that. And Newcastle have got into top four, but if they want to challenge for the title, they're not going to do it with Dan Burn and Willock and Callum Wilson. And they're good players, and they can still be part of the journey. But it's as clear as the nose on your face that if you want to compete to win the title, you do have to buy the Victor Osimhens. So it's inevitable that Newcastle will do these sort of deals at some point. It's just when they want to do them. Is this the summer where they go, yeah, we do want that sort of a signing? Or is it the summer where they go, we're not necessarily at that point yet. Next year's going to be adventure. Let's stick with a lot of the players that got us here. And I don't know what Newcastle's appetite is. I mean, I've said before, long term, Eddie Howe, I hope he's the manager of Newcastle, but to do that, he's going to have to win Premier League titles. He's going to have to go deep in the Champions League. And if he can't do that, they will replace him, because the blueprint is set by Man City and the wealth is there at Newcastle. But I, for one, would not be ruling Newcastle out of this race. Some people will go, they don't need him. They've got Callum Wilson, they've got Isaac. But Callum Wilson has had his injury problems. And also, he's not getting any younger. Victor Osimhen's a better striker. They might do it. And also competition for places, more games because of Europe. I can see Newcastle having a go at this. And Newcastle probably have the strength. Man United have got a lot of money to spend on lots of different areas. Newcastle might just go in and they go, that's our marquee. We want a marquee signing. Let's do it. Would Victor Osimhen fancy it? Why not? Why wouldn't he fancy it? Why wouldn't you fancy 3 or 4 years at Newcastle on good money in the Champions League fighting for major trophies? Chelsea is the team that I would expect, but there are, Chelsea don't have Champions League football. That could be a key. So watch this one. I think he's coming to the Premier League or he's staying at Napoli, and I don't think he wants to stay at Napoli. I don't. I think he wants to come to the Premier League. So watch this space. That could be a really big signing. Get your comments in below on that one. The next thing I want to talk about is the Celtic manager. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm going to call him Ange. Ange, he's done a good job, but look, I worry about this. I worry about him, and I worry about Spurs. I don't worry about the Spurs ownership. I worry about the Spurs fans, and I worry about Ange, and I worry about Celtic fans losing a manager that they really, really like. I mean, I was looking at, at Celtic, he's done a fantastic job there. I think he's got a win percentage of above 70%. They're winning titles. Where was he before that? I think he managed in Japan, didn't he? I mean, I didn't really know much about him until he went to Celtic. His style of football for Celtic's very interesting. It's not defensive. It's not Nuno. It's not Mourinho. It's not Conte. It's pressing. It's more attractive. If he can transfer that style of football into the Premier League, I think it will suit the Premier League. The big problem he's got, and the big problem any manager's got at Spurs, and they've had big managers in Mourinho and Conte, is that you are on a hiding to nothing anyway. I mean, you are technically playing for 7th anyway. You are not going to finish above United, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle. You're playing for 7th. And the Spurs fans' mentality is that we're quite used to being in the Champions League. We're quite used to fighting for top 4. We've got a stadium that reflects one of the best stadiums in Europe. But because of the way Spurs has been run, they have no divine right to be in the top 6. Then, in fact, Spurs are probably on a level with Brighton, and Brighton would say we're on a better level. So that is the problem that Spurs have. The expectation of the fans doesn't match the realistic setup of the club, and that manager comes in, and a good season for him next year, if he does take the job, is 7th. But is that what new Spurs fans want when they're playing Arsenal and getting beat? Because I just think until Spurs change the way they run, they're not gonna be a traditional top 6 club anymore. I think it's very difficult to do that. And if he achieves that, you need to build him a statue. So I think as long as he comes into this with eyes open, and Spurs fans go into eyes open, you play better football. And I think that's what Spurs need to do. And that's a tick in the box. You've got to play better football. But realistically, what is achievable for Spurs, I think the expectations need to be set on a far more realistic level, that you will be fighting for 7th next season. And if you get that, that's a good season for Spurs. Is there a manager out there that could come out? I mean, look, if I'm being honest, it's Spurs. If he comes down from Celtic, Neil Lennon did that. It doesn't mean because you're a Celtic manager, you're going to come down and do well in this league. You're dictated to by the circumstances that you walk into. If he takes the Liverpool job, he's got a far more better chance of being successful. Taking the Spurs job, I don't care who you are. I don't care if Pep takes the Spurs job. He's not going to get him in the top 6 next year without huge investment, and that's not going to happen. So I think it would be an interesting signing for Spurs, and I think there'll be an improvement in the way that they play football. And I think that's the big win for Spurs straight away, is to play better football. But, you could, if you were making a prediction, you'd say give it 18 months and they'll be looking for a new manager. I don't know, but I think the first step for Spurs is to play better football. But interesting. Get your comments in below. What are you thinking about that? What's better out there? It's June the 2nd. They haven't even got a bloody manager. They clearly are struggling to get managers in when on June the 2nd they haven't got one. So the most important thing for Spurs is that they had a manager last week. They've got to get moving now, and this could be the best option that's available. Anyway, smash a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe. Couple of interesting topics. Get your comments in below.